Good morning, family. Welcome to another not so sweet Thursday. I am Vicki, and you are with Grammy in the Kitchen. Today it's all about sourdough. So I'm going to make English muffins, some sourdough discard crackers. I love these crackers. They're so good. But first we have to start this sourdough bread. We'll send you back in time. So this morning I woke up and I fed the sourdough starter. You can see right here, this is the time, 10:30 a.m. And you can see how much it has risen. It's absolutely gorgeous. So we need a half a cup of active starter, 1 cup of milk. I put that in the microwave, just microwaved it for about 30 seconds just to warm it up. And 2 cups of all-purpose flour. That's 7:30 p.m. And let's go back till the present time. So it's been sitting here for 13 hours. But now we need to go ahead and get started on making the English muffins. So here is our fermented dough we did last night. We have a tablespoon of sugar. Stir that in. It smells so good. I love sourdough. And I have 1 teaspoon of baking soda and a half teaspoon of salt. We're going to need an additional half cup of flour. And we're going to need that just so we can incorporate that sugar, salt, and baking soda. That should be good. And now we're going to roll it out. We're going to roll it to about a 1/2 inch thick. I think we don't need any more flour. I think we're good. Beautiful. I have the small baking sheet with parchment paper, and I have some polenta. You can use cornmeal. Just going to put a nice dusting right here. I'm using a regular size canning jar lid or the ring, and I'm going to make my circles. Place it right on that cornmeal. Gather our dough and repeat the process. And then we're going to have a funky one, but that's okay. So I have the cast iron griddle on the stove. I have it on a medium low, closer to the medium. I need to heat this griddle up really, really hot. Then we can start cooking our English muffins. Our griddle is nice and hot, and we have polenta on the bottom of the English muffins. Now I need to put polenta on the top. So I'm going to put some polenta, and I say that, but you can use cornmeal, on the griddle. And put them top side down. And we're going to cook them about 3 to 5 minutes per side. We want them to have a nice charred color to the bottom side. I'm going to turn it down right in the middle of medium and low. You can start seeing it steaming. Not quite there. Can you see that color? Look at that color. Perfect. You can start seeing them puff up. Oh, it's gorgeous. See, with the back smaller burner, it's actually cooking faster than the front bigger burner. So let me scoot everything to the back. Now I'm just going to pick a random one to take the temperature, because all bread needs to be between 205 and 215 degrees Fahrenheit. Going in on the side. We're reading 185, so we need to cook it just a little bit longer. Now I'm going to scrape all of this cooked cornmeal off into the trash. And I'm going to add fresh cornmeal. Repeat the process with the second half, then we'll be done. Let me turn that back burner down just a bit. It's starting to cook that cornmeal too much. That's the funky one. And again, we're going to cook this the same way we did with the first batch. The second half of the English muffins are cooking, almost done. They're ready. But now we're going to make a sourdough discard cracker. Now when I feed my sourdough starter, I always start off with 200 grams in each jar. And the rest of it, I just put in a mason jar and I keep it in the refrigerator. This is the discard from my sourdough. I'll leave a link in the description below on where I found this recipe. But this recipe is tripled. So we need 600 grams of discard. So I got the kitchen scale, tear it out to 0, and I'm going to weigh out 600 grams of this discard. Which is almost a whole entire mason jar. Oop, too much. I have the oven preheating to 325. And the last of the English muffins are done. We'll go ahead and take those off of the stove. Burners are off. We're going to put in 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. We're going to add a 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. This is not the green can kind. I get these in wedges from Sourdough Starter and I grate it myself and I keep it in the freezer. We have 6 teaspoons of Herb de Provence. I get this from Sourdough Starter also. This is a 1-pound bag. It was about $18. But you can use any kind of spice blend you like. Italian seasoning, basil, oregano, garlic powder, onion powder. Just use whatever you like. I am going to add about a teaspoon of garlic powder, This is a half teaspoon measure. And I have 64 grams of butter. This is homemade butter we made on Tuesday. Melted and cooled. And we're just going to mix that until all the butter has been incorporated into the sourdough. Okay, Vicki, let's make a mess. And everything is well combined. How easy was that? I have the large baking sheet lined with parchment paper. And this is why I triple this recipe, because I make it on the big pan. We're going to spread it out as thin as we possibly can. And this is going to go in a 325-degree oven for 10 minutes. Then we're going to take it out of the oven. We're going to score it with a pizza cutter into the size crackers we want. Then we have to bake it for another 50 minutes to an hour. And the English muffins, I use the small canning ring. But if you do want yours a little bit bigger, just use the bigger one. Will be just fine. But this is the size I want it. So I'm going to set this aside. Figured I'd go ahead and feed my sourdough starter again today. I fed it yesterday at 10:30. We made our sourdough English muffins last night. So I'm going to dump everything into this bowl. Turn my scale out to 0 with the jar, and I'm going to add 200 grams back in here. If it's over or under a couple grams, it's fine. This is actually at 207. It's okay. Do my second jar. And again, 200 grams. $201 is fine. And this is my sourdough discard jar that I keep in the refrigerator. I am going to put the leftovers in here. We have 200 grams of sourdough starter. We need to add a total of 200 grams. So it's going to be 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour. Tear it out to 0 and add 100 grams of water. Let's do the second one. I'm going to mix that up really well, the water and the sourdough starter. And the second one. And now we're going to add 100 grams of flour. Mix that in really well. Make sure all that flour has been hydrated and mixed in with the sourdough starter. And now the second one. And I like to scrape the side walls. That way I can keep an eye on how it's growing. Now in the winter, I find that my kitchen is usually the coldest room in the house if I'm not cooking. I don't have to feed my sourdough starter every day. I can actually skip a day or two. But if I want to go longer than that, I'll just stick it in the refrigerator for up to 5 days. And then I'll take it out, do the whole discard, put that in a jar, feed it, let it sit out for a couple days, and then I'll repeat the process until I need to make something. So I went ahead and took out the crackers. It's been 10 minutes. And now we're going to cut and score these like we will for crackers. I'm going to make mine about 3/4 of an inch wide. You can smell the garlic and the herb de Provence, the melted Parmesan cheese in here. It's gorgeous. And I'm going to make them about an inch long. Doesn't matter if it's not perfect. I'm going to slide it back into the baking sheet and back in the oven for 50 minutes to an hour. So they've been in the oven for 15 minutes, part of that 50 to 60 minutes. But I find that I like to flip mine so they're crisping on both sides. Time consuming, but it's okay. It's not a required step, it's just something I like to do. They're warm, but it's not hot, so I can handle it with my fingers. And I'm trying to put them back in a single layer. I readjusted the time on the stove for 34 minutes. Put this back in the oven. So they've been in the oven for 45 minutes. And that's what we want right there. Perfect. Now the next sourdough recipe is new to me, but I figured I'd bring you along to see if it works. This recipe is actually from Farmhouse on Boone, Lisa's sourdough discard pizza recipe. So I have the 12-inch cast iron skillet going into a 425-degree oven to heat up and get nice and hot. I'm going to leave that in there for about 15 to 20 minutes to make sure it's hot. The crackers I can set aside for right now. The English muffins are just sitting on the stove. We're going to be making breakfast sandwich with that. So I have almost 500 grams of discard left in this jar. We're going to use most of it, if not all of it. I have a little bit of pizza sauce that the husband has been using to make his little sandwiches. We have a few pepperonis. And I took 2 small, I think they're 4 ounces of home grated mozzarella cheese. Took those out of the freezer this morning. Plus we still have Parmesan cheese from making the crackers. Olive oil, and then I'm using about a half a teaspoon of Italian seasoning and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That's all we need. As soon as that pan gets hot, we can go ahead and assemble our pizza. The cast iron skillet has been in the oven for 15 minutes. I want to drizzle some olive oil in here. And this is our sourdough discard. We're just going to pour it in here. Ooh, listen to that sizzle. You can make it as thin or as thick as you like. That looks good. Nope, I did not even weigh it. This is going to go back in the oven for about 10 minutes. Let's sprinkle our herbs and salt. And there's a little bit of olive oil on the top. Perfect. Back in the oven for 10 minutes, and then we can go ahead and start dressing up the pizza. And I have that much discard. It's probably about a half a cup. Just going to put that in the refrigerator. And the next time we need to feed our starter and discard whatever we don't need, I can just add it to that jar and we can make another recipe. There is a recipe I have made in the past, and if I can find that video, I'll put a link right here, plus in the description below, where we made a chocolate, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a discard cereal recipe. Family, that was really good. So maybe the next time I accumulate some more discard, I'll make that with y'all also. It is so good and healthy with real ingredients. I love that cereal recipe. So as soon as that cooks for about 10 minutes, we're going to dress it, put it back in the oven to melt the cheese, and then lunch will be ready. Okay, so the sourdough discard has been cooking for 10 minutes. It's a little spongy, but I think that's expected. So here's some pizza sauce we made together and canned it. It's probably about 1/3 of a pint. It's whatever was left in the refrigerator. I'm going to go to about a 1/2 inch to the edge of the crust. That looks good. And now I'm going to put some mozzarella right on top. I might only need one of these packages. So we'll say 4 ounces of mozzarella. And I'm just going to put about 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. That looks good. And I'm just going to top it off with some pepperoni. Just something simple. And I'm curious, because you know we make our own homemade frozen pizzas. I wonder if this freezes. We'll have to do an experiment on that. That looks good. Back in the oven until the cheese melts. And then we're ready for lunch. I'm going to say 10 minutes. So I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. And then we'll check it again. 10 minutes is up. And I think that was perfect. Oh, look how that just released. Beautiful. This pan is super hot. Look at that, that's so pretty. I'm using a knife instead of a pizza cutter because it's a little bit thick and I don't want to move the toppings. I want to see what the bottom looks like. Okay, it's a little bit pale. So it's a little bit different from the yeast pizza dough, but the truth is in the flavor. I think I made my crust a little thicker than Lisa does on Farmhouse on Boone. It's a little chewy. I could taste the sourdough. It's very, very sour. But it's another good way to use up sourdough discard. It is good, don't get me wrong. I like sourdough anyway, so it's delicious. So that's for lunch today. I have the oven preheating to 375 degrees. We're going to bake an egg and sausage dish to cut up into squares to put on our English muffins. So I took out 2 of our 8 ounces of homemade breakfast sausage. I'm just going to get them on the stove and brown those up. I have some eggs right there. I'm going to go ahead and just scramble those in a bowl. Add the sausage, put them in a casserole dish, and stick that in the oven. So I only have 7 eggs left in the whole house, but that's okay. I am going to add about a half teaspoon of salt, about a quarter teaspoon of pepper. Get that all nice and scrambled. This is a 13 by 9 casserole dish. We'll put a drizzle of avocado oil. Get that smeared in here really well. That looks good. Let's add our egg mixture. Perfect. And we're going to sprinkle the sausage right on top. We want to make sure we have sausage all over. So when we cut these into little squares and make our sandwiches, we have sausage everywhere. In a 375 degree oven, I'm not sure how long that's going to take, but we want the eggs to be set. I went to the store yesterday and I picked up 1 pound of pepper jack cheese. This is not organic. It's not A2A2. Need to get back to ordering from Azure Standard in the new year. And I want to slice them about 1/4 of an inch thick. Best I can. Probably only going to do half of this. Because I'm thinking 1 slice will be perfect for 1 English muffin. All right, I'm going to stop at doing 10 because I really don't have a lot of eggs. So I'm just going to take a fork to the English muffins and go all the way around. and open them up. Perfect. Can you see all the nooks and crannies in there? It's beautiful. Okay, that is 10. And that leaves us 10 that are not cut. The egg has set. It's no longer loose. So let's see if we can get it out of this pan. Loosening it from the edges. Okay, I'm going to try to go underneath without destroying it too much. There we go. Now I'm going to lay my cheese on top so the residual heat can melt the cheese just a bit. If we have to cut some more, it's okay. I think that is good. All right, I'm going to let that sit for about 10 minutes and then we'll cut into it. So the eggs took 27 minutes to cook. Let that cool off for a bit. We'll cut it and we'll go ahead and make our sandwiches and get those in the freezer. In the meantime, it'd be a perfect time to do some dishes. My favorite job. Okay, let's go ahead and start cutting this up. I might get more because my muffins are pretty small. Let's see how many we can get. Oh, perfect. Look at that, family. Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. So I have 5 left. So I'm going to open up 5 more. I want to wrap those in parchment paper. I'm going to have one of these breakfast sandwiches just so we know we did it right. Family, that is so good. Oh, that is really good. And when we fed our sourdough starter, it was here, right there, and now it's up to here. It has risen about 1.5 inches. Perfect. That's one recipe we can make with our sourdough starter, and then 2 recipes we could make with the sourdough discard. The crackers are my favorite crackers in the whole wide world. I tripled this batch because I have a large baking sheet and I can make more at one time and I don't have to make them as often. So we have 11 breakfast sandwiches going into the freezer. We have 5 English muffins we can eat at the moment whenever we want. I have 3 breakfast sandwiches I'm going to put in the refrigerator so I can have that for the next couple of days. We have pizza for lunch, and I'm eating my breakfast. And I'll have all the information of the recipes we use today in the description below. Plus, I have a video on making your own from scratch sourdough starter. It's a 2-week process with only 2 ingredients, all-purpose flour and filtered water. I always use the Berkey water when I make and then feed my sourdough starter. I'll have that in the description below also. And if I can find the video for the chocolate sourdough discard cereal, I'll also put that in the description below. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you don't cook with sourdough, please, I encourage you, just get in your kitchen and do it. There's going to be failures. Failure is expected, but we can learn from our failure and move on and have a success. Please give this video a thumbs up. While you're at it, please subscribe. I really would love to have you part of the Grammy family. And until next time, y'all have a blessed day. Get that sourdough starter going and start making things with sourdough and discard. Sandwich is really good.